Call the meeting to order. Mr. Wilson, if you would call the roll, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Roll call. Jim McLean.
Here.
Keith Bailey. Paul Muscati.
Here.
Sandra York.
Here.
Jeremy Inman.
Here.
Carolyn Lomas. Here. Cindy Nord.
Here.
Mr. Wilson, was the meeting notification addressed and was the agenda posted?
Yes, sir, it was.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda by substituting a revised agenda with the following changes. Open citizen comments be moved to item 2, and that action items be moved to item 3. An executive session will be added as item 4, and that we go into executive session before the vote on the COA to receive legal advice. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to make a motion on the agenda, please, and that would be to move citizens' comments for each section after the discussion itself. For example, the open citizens' comments will follow on University 702, those who have signed up, and then there will be additional comments for 300 Main Street, but they will be separated into 2 separate comment sections.
Sure. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Wilson, can you bring up the first item?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
excuse me. We'll have to do approval of the minutes, if y'all would take a look at
That's right.
those. Can I have a motion to approve? Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now, Mr. Wilson, if you will bring the first item up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, do you want me to go into the action item A? And then if there's anybody that wishes to speak on this action item, to speak?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, so action item A is a certificate of appropriateness for a brick and mortar building located in the Town Center District at 702 University Village Drive, tax map number R15200-01-26 and 30. It is 2 parcels. The applicant was here last month. Again, they've submitted a COA application to construct a new brick and mortar building. The project was before the BAR last month, and a summary of what additional information the BAR requested is below. For those of you that weren't here, we'll go through them. Some of the items that the board recognized that the applicant look into, reduce or eliminate the stucco, increase the brick detailing, reevaluate the awnings, modify the cap or roof line appearance, verify parking count, address sidewalks and connectivity, confirm compliant lighting, consider color adjustments with less emphasis on black elements, and review rooftop equipment screening. We do have the applicant here today. Mr. Mike Ziegler is back with us, and we do have some new renderings here for the board to look at. Mr. Ziegler, if you want to take the podium. And if you want to add anything that I might have missed there, or any updates that are addressed in the new renderings. And if you want to tell me which slide to go to, just let me know.
Great. I've got Josh Friel with GPN. He's our architect. He was here at the last meeting as well. As I said earlier, I want to thank you guys again for your time in going over our project. We understand I feel like we understood what you said at the last meeting, which this is the front door to the community. You want architecture that is complementary to what Blythewood stands for. We were a little off on that, in that we had a different idea, but we heard what you had to say. We actually left the meeting last time. We went and drove through the Food Lion development to really see what they did to address some of the concerns that you guys had and try and incorporate them. I actually spent the night, spent the next day driving through the neighborhoods here to make sure I truly understood the newer buildings and what you guys were going for as far as the architecture. We then had follow-up conversations, and I feel like we did a pretty good job of taking what you guys had to say and put that to use. Obviously, we did away with the EFS. We addressed it and wrapped it completely in brick. We did address the screening issue. So we've made sure that we've got plenty of room to screen for any of the HVAC units on the roof. We took out the black elements that were very predominant in the before. What else did we do? I think Josh can get into a little bit more of some of the brick attributes.
Yeah, so obviously one of the points of contention was the horizontal projections on the parapet. So what we've done is back that off, obviously. Now you'll see, and it's a little hard on these renderings, there's kind of a double stack soldier course that progressively projects out, kind of give a little more break up, just kind of that flat facade. There's also a soldier course above the windows and below to kind of create a horizontal line that carries throughout the back, front, and sides. To Mike's point, we had revisited the awnings. I know the horizontal awnings were not well received, so I believe we took a look at, I think, McDonald's and some of the adjacent properties, kind of drew off of those a little bit more. One thing to note, because of the parapet height and the screening purposes, there's now interior roof ladders in a landlord room, so there won't be a concern of seeing an unsightly access ladder on the back of the building or anything like that. Along with that...
You didn't tell me that.
Oh, sorry, snuck that in. The goal with that landlord room is to also try to contain as many of the utilities, because I know there's some concern on the backside with that being the more visible and access portion of the property. The goal would be to try to contain as much of the utilities, whether it be meters and things like that, within that room as well. Also, sorry, to Mike's point, the screening of the HVAC units. This is a pretty tall building. On the front side, you have about 4.5 feet, and that's of the low parapet. As the roof slopes back, it gets up to about 5.5 feet. If you figure an average HVAC unit's going to be about 4 feet tall, including another foot for a curb, most of that's, or all of that's basically screened if you were at eye level. Then you factor in that you're about 18 feet down. I think we've done a good job of taking care of the screening issue as well.
And we did, I did have a conversation with Mr. Wilson with regards to parking, so there's not an issue with any of the parking. The only thing that we really weren't able to address was the issue that was raised was that of the sidewalks. Just because none of our neighbors really have sidewalks, but we committed at last meeting that in the event that we can convince the owners of the Food Line development and the homeowners association to put in some sidewalks back there, we will absolutely join with them to bring it all the way up to Blythewood Road. We don't have a problem with it. I just, like I said, it doesn't make much sense for me to put a sidewalk to nowhere at this point in time. But we'll be happy to join in a community effort.
Thank you. Appreciate that. On the brick, just out of curiosity, it's all one color brick? Just, you've added detailing, a little bit more detailing, it sounds like?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any of the board members have any questions?
Comments from our advisor, maybe? Sure.
Mr. Chairman, we want to thank the architect and applicant of listening and responding. As I understand, so the board gets a good image of this, you're looking at a building that's going to look quite some like the existing structure that is in the shopping center. I only say that so that we understand, with the architect's help, trying to make this a distinctive new building without the things that were a problem with the board last time. I would like perhaps to ask the architect to get a little bit more into the details. Perhaps there might be some questions about one brick color versus two brick colors. What is the detailing? Because I think what they defaulted to try to be somewhat safe in the acceptance was looking a little bit more like what's on that piece of property behind them. And again, it says here, this is a very distinctive piece of property. This is a gateway into Blythewood. So I don't want our applicant to back away so far that we've lost anything that's really distinctive. That's my only comments.
It is the front door to the town coming off the interstate. And if there's any adjustments along the way that you think of, by all means bring them up. You know, we'd love to set the building apart, just like the building we're in right now. There's nothing like it in the town.
That's right.
So whatever, if you see some enhancements along the way, by all means, let's talk about them.
Okay. Not a problem. Yeah, as I said, we're long-term holders of real estate, so we plan on being part of the community for quite some time. So we want to work with you and have you guys be happy and visiting often.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to say that I really appreciate all your work and that you listened, heard us, and understood what we were saying. Appreciate that.
Thank you. I give props to Josh for that. All I did was tell him to do that.
Anyone else? Can I have a motion to?
Do you have any brick samples?
Mr. Chairman, you asked if there were two colored brick. Perhaps the architect might want to respond in taking this color as your base wall color. Would you consider adding some interest with various soldiers and details, maybe with a slightly different color just to You know, it's easy when you look up here, you can't see the brick detail because it's a drawing. Same thing when you drive down the road. Sometimes architects will make some of the features sort of pop a little bit to make that distinctive feature pop out at you. And, would you mind speaking about that possibility?
I don't think we have an issue looking into that, yeah.
Yeah, we'll take a look at a couple of different alternatives to try and give you, you know, either a differentiating line around the building or some variance as we go on through the elevation a little bit and make sure that we come up with a color scheme. Obviously, you're gonna get some natural deviation when you've got that much brick, you're gonna get some deviation in colors as it is, but we'll look at some different options as well.
The banding around it is a soldier course, right?
Pardon?
This banding around it is a soldier course?
Yes, sir.
And that's what, I guess you're talking about, having more of a distinct
Certainly,
appearance.
yes.
In the drawing, you can see a distinct difference.
Right.
So maybe to clarify what a soldier course is, you take the brick and turn it vertical.
Vertical, right.
And so you pick up the 8 inches this way versus stacking them, just for clarification.
Any other questions?
I just had a thought. Is there any uniformity in the signs that will be above?
Can you speak into the mic, please?
Is there any uniformity in the signs above whoever rents it? Do
So
you have any
that's,
requirements there?
they'll all comply with your local ordinances.
Okay.
Typically, in an effort to bring in the national brands to complement any local uses as well, the national brands are pretty,
Standard.
you know, determined to keep their logos and in the colors that they put out there.
And I do just want to mention, it was mentioned last month, but they're not going to have a monument sign. Correct? Correct. So there will be no monument sign out there. Their only signage will actually be on the building. So we won't have another sign out there cluttering things up, so to speak. But they don't have a desire for that.
We want people focused on the traffic circle.
And those signs are limited in terms of what the sign ordinance has per building sign, correct?
Yes, the wall signs that they're allowed will be 20 square feet per the sign ordinance. Mhm.
One thing that just occurred to me, is there any requirement from DOT or a like agency about parking stacking off of your lot into the road?
We've specifically taken those drive-throughs and had them stacked towards the interior so that we wouldn't come up with a problem just like what you had. So we've made sure that the traffic, once it gets in, is going to stay in. If it does wrap around it, it would end up wrapping around a building first. So you would be looking at probably close to 40 cars having to be in line for a drive-through before it would exit our property.
Okay.
So we went over and above just to make sure, because we know what happens when some brands open up, it becomes an absolute traffic nightmare.
I had a question about the awnings. I saw that you guys obviously changed them. Is it going to be a metal awning, or
Yes.
do you know what color they're going to be? Did you already decide what color?
So right now, the proposed is kind of a darker gray, gunmetal, dove gray, somewhere in that range.
Any other questions?
I move we approve the presentation, the structure as presented, with the exception of having you as chairman and our architectural advisor approve the contrasting color for the social course.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
All right, the motion carries. It
Thank
is,
you very
it is
much.
approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Oh, is there anybody that wishes to speak on 702 University Village?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hearing none? For this item here, is there any open citizen comments for this item that we just heard? Okay.
All right, open citizens comment for the action item 2B, 3B actually, 300 Main Street. Do you have a list of folks that are signed up? Thank you. Great, well, let's go ahead and get started and listen to what these folks have to say. Martha McCoy.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, can I go over the memo, please, on what this item is?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Action item B is a certificate of appropriateness for demolition at 300 Main Street, tax map number R15213-02-13. The applicant is Team MKC. And again, the applicant has applied for a demolition, a COA, for demolition of the existing building located at 300 Main Street. The project before the BAR, as required under section 155.316 of the Blythewood zoning ordinance, the Board of Architectural Review has COA authority over structures located in the Town Center District portion of the Architectural Overlay District. Additionally, the BAR has authority over demolition as cited in section 155.543, letter A, and it reads a certificate of appropriateness is required for class 1 or class 2 structures before a building permit can be issued for the demolition, new construction, exterior alteration, relocation, modification, or addition to a designated historic property. Any building permit not issued in conformity with the subchapter shall be considered void. And as always, the proposed project must comply with the standards set forth in the Town Center Zoning District Design Standards.
Thank you.
Would you like to have the applicant come up first or the citizen comments?
I think the citizen comments
Okay,
go first.
we can move forward, and if you just want to call them out as they were written.
Sure. Miss Martha McCoy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Martha McCoy. I'm the president of the Historical Society and Museum in Blythewood. And I'm just kind of giving you guys a timeline history lesson on the building, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
The Langford brothers actually started the general store in Blythewood in 1914. However, it was in a wooden building. Later, they built the brick building in 1920s, like early 20s. We're not quite sure of the exact date. But that's the picture of the original building as it stands, same building. And then in that building, of course, there was a drugstore. Dr. Langford had his practice there and everything. I mean, it was, you know, they did a lot there. Pharmacy, general store, they sold everything. They sold textiles, anything you can think of that the farmers needed, like farming supplies and all that. Unfortunately, the Langfords lost the building in foreclosure. So the store was auctioned off, and the Swaggarts purchased the building. And then in 1939, Roger Wilson, well, tax records actually showed 1937, but in 1939, Roger Wilson purchased the store. When he returned from World War I, he ran it along with Buddy Wilson. Buddy Langford, excuse me. It became Wilson's Variety Store and Post Office. Buddy Langford cut hair in the back of that store as well, and they sold everything that the town needed. When the store was modernized, it's a picture of it here, and which looks like the building now, pretty much. It became Wilson's Community Store, and that's how I actually remember it. They sold everything from fabric, clothing, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and fresh meats. They were also, next slide. They were also known for their famous sausage in the town, and all around, actually. And they were also the farmers' way of getting their livestock with the meat cut up. So they were the local butcher for the farmers, which my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they all used Wilson's store for this. Well, and as you can see, this was the What's Happening in Blythewood. This is where you got all the information, is at the store. So the housewives would just stand around and just get all the scoop on Blythewood at the store. Blythewood residents were also able to keep a tab. The Wilsons allowed any resident of Blythewood to keep a tab, and when they got paid the end of the week or next week, they were able to pay them then. And of course, the store closed, unfortunately, in 1984. And it was several churches. I think the longest church that was there was the Breath of Life Church. They were there for about 10 years, and they were the ones that put the cross up. And there, yeah. Yes, and they added the porch as well. You're right. I just did a brief history on the dates, and I'm going to let all of these good people that would like to speak about it, but if you want more history on Blythewood, please come join us at the museum.
Ms. Frankie McLean for Ann Maddox. And
Thank
Frankie,
you.
if you'll explain why you're presenting for her.
Yes, thank you. Ann Maddox, she's actually Ann Langford Maddox, and her relatives built the store. She lives out of town and could not come, so she has asked if I would read a letter, and I'll be glad that she would like for y'all to hear, so I'll be glad to give you a copy of it afterwards, but that's why I'm reading it for Ann. Is that permissible? Sure. Okay. And she has written, Reflections of Wilson's Community Store by Ann Langford Maddox. I grew up in downtown Blythewood, graduating from Blythewood High in 1960. George Yarborough Langford was my great-grandfather, and along with his sons, he built the Langford Brothers store in 1900, and we've seen some of those pictures. Sidney Langford, my grandfather, managed the store in the 1920s. As a general mercantile and grocery store, every available space was stocked with essential farming and household needs. Cotton was stored in a tin building out back and shipped out by train. After World War II, Roger Wilson, who owned the store, returned, and along with my father, Buddy Langford, managed, operated an essential business for a rural community. I was part of that establishment growing up. I began there at the age of 10. I stocked shelves, bagged groceries, carried out groceries, and all for the customers. I then graduated to the adding machine and the cash register as a teenager. After high school, I went to the University of South Carolina. Wilson's store was a gathering place for talking with friends and neighbors while purchasing supplies. Fresh fruit and vegetables from the old Columbia Market on Assembly Street were sold there, along with items such as clothes, overalls, towels, underwear, health items, non-prescription drugs, ointments, feed for your animals, bridles, and tools. Roger Wilson was widely known for his homemade sausage. People would stop on their way from Charlotte to purchase sausage, and we had a big crowd from Columbia come out to buy sausage. Politicians came, and they brought their families to introduce them to the customers. I learned to be interested in politics at a young age from those experiences. 2 nights a week, my father operated a men's barber shop in the back of the store. The men would sit on the feed sacks, which served as chairs. Workers carpooled to Columbia and would leave their cars in the parking lot. The Greyhound bus even made a stop outside the store. The post office was connected to a part of this structure. All of the towns and the families had post office boxes. The train brought the mail to Blythewood. Pleasantries were always a part of the day at the post office and the store. There were no drive-ins for fast food, and eating out in the 1940s and the 1950s was seldom done. Wilson's community store was a mainstay in the area, which contributed to the livelihood of Blythewood. Written by Anne Langford Maddox, February the 10th, 2026.
Thank you. You got comments of your own?
Yes. And I am Frankie McLean, and these are my comments now, since I read for Anne. I'd like for us to think about a few words. The first one is foundation, the foundation of our community. When a structure is built, its foundation is one of the most important parts. And the building, the Langford Brothers / Wilson store, is one of the most important and vital buildings in our community. When it was built in the early 1900s, it housed the U.S. Post Office, Dr. Langford's medical office, and the mercantile store. As you can understand, it serves as a very useful and important role in the growth of our town. Many and most of the houses and buildings that lined Main Street are now gone. The structures and the history are lost forever. Please don't let this happen to this building. This structure needs to continue to be an important part of our foundation in our historical district. I feel that it has a useful and meaningful purpose in the town. The community is rapidly changing, and our historical buildings need to be saved. Let's just take a deep breath. How about imagine you were walking in the store years ago. You might first run into a neighbor. Then you might buy some seeds. You might buy some grain for your animals. You might even give a stranger some directions to our community. And then, when you walk out to leave, you might be lucky enough to see Dr. Langford coming down Main Street in the only car in Blythewood. Currently, when we look at this structure, we see a cream-colored building. And the cream color has covered up many of the architectural features of the building. The building was painted, the building was painted before the town had a BAR. Now we have a BAR, and that BAR oversees preservation of our historical buildings and landmarks. I request that you recognize the historical value of this building and do not allow for it to be torn down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Marie Berry?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As mentioned, my name's Marie Berry, and my family sold this property to Mr. Graham in mid-December. As you may have read in Mr. Graham's February 5th letter in The Voice, he is co-owner of Palmetto Renovations with family ties to Blythewood and a stated appreciation for the community and the historic structure at 300 Main Street. It seemed like the perfect fit, a buyer with a background in renovation, ties to the area, and an expressed love for the town's history. I was genuinely excited about the prospect of this property being revitalized by someone with the experience and expertise to do so. While I understand that a change in ownership is never a guarantee of outcome, and I respect a property owner's right to make decisions about their property, what was not expected and what concerns me is the speed and finality of this demolition request. Just because something is within our rights to do doesn't necessarily make it the right thing to do. Renovations, especially of older and historic structures, can be unpredictable and costly. However, renovation seems to offer the most beneficial long-term outcome for both Mr. Graham and the community. With a current footprint of roughly 4,000 square feet and options for a variety of tenants, the property holds substantial long-term potential. Mr. Graham stated his desire to save the building, writing, "When I bought this old historic building on 300 Main Street, I was dead set on fixing it up, maybe even shining it up nicer than before, to keep alive that piece of our community we all hold dear." That's encouraging to hear. With that in mind, I respectfully ask that this demolition application be paused so that relevant parties can sit down together and explore realistic and creative alternatives to demolition. There may be grants, tax incentives, or other resources available to help offset cost. Surely there must be another solution that does not involve demolition. This building is not simply brick and lumber, not simply an aging building. It is part of the lived and loved history of our community, as we've heard here tonight. Many of us remember it as Wilson's store, a meaningful part of our town's commercial and social history, and a building that has stood long enough to become part of our town's memory deserves careful and deliberate consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Tim McSwain?
Hello, I'm Tim McSwain. I'm on the Blythewood Historical Museum board, and I was asked to join that board a little over a year ago. And I've lived in the Blythewood area, my family has, for over 35 years. My interest, of course, is in protecting some of the history that we have in this town. And as you've heard from other folks, it's extensive. It used to be a very small area, but that building held the heartbeat of this town. I am totally against the demolition of that building. This town, our town is we're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads of whether or not we have any interest in protecting history, protecting things that people have valued over the years, or do we want to become gas stations and fast food places with no history at all? And if we allow that to happen, you may as well change the name of the town from Blythewood to Exit 27. I am totally against the demolition. Thank you.
Miss Missy Clemente?
Hello, my name is Missy Clemente. I've lived here my whole life. I own Blown Away Salon in Blythewood. I've had my business for 18 years here. When I think about the history of Blythewood and the word history, I think of it being history. And I hope that we don't tear down one of Blythewood's stories. And Wilson's grocery store is one of the main stories. I went to Blythewood Elementary from kindergarten through 3rd grade and then over to Bethel Hanbury, and I graduated from Spring Valley High School. And as a kid going to school and coming from school, we would stop, and walking in the store, I can still hear your footsteps on those wood floors. And that is something that we don't have anymore. Floors are completely different in stores, and it would be a shame to tear down one of the only buildings we have left in Blythewood. It is our history, and we have very little left of what we can see in Blythewood of history. So I do oppose to tearing down this building. Thank you.
Woody and Sylvia Wilson.
If I could, I'd like to add a little bit on to what these other people said. I was an employee there at the store for actually a part-time employee for probably like 4 years or 5 years. And between that, in between school, end of June to the 1st of September, I became a full-time employee. I didn't really make a lot of money. Uncle Roger paid me, he paid me actually 50 cents an hour. And I'm not talking about actually a 40-hour week. It was probably 50 or 60 hours. Also, it was a part of our family also. My father, Elton Wilson, he went to work in there probably after 39, but it was ahead of the Second World War. Oh, and my Uncle Roger, he had to go in the Army. So he handed everything over to actually Elton Wilson. And he operated, I'm really leaving out some, I don't know whether it actually matters. But he found out that the store was very, very deep in debt. After the war was actually on the way, people started to become employed, I mean, even more so, started making money, started actually buying there if they were in the Blythewood area. What my father did is he applied everything that he possibly could to pay off the outstanding debt. When my uncle, when he came home, Uncle Roger came home after the war in probably 45 or 46, I'm not exactly sure. The store was completely debt-free. And my father actually handed over, excuse me, to my Uncle Roger, $14,000 in the bank. He continued there, Elton Wilson, he continued there till, I'm not exactly sure, but sometime in the actually early 50s. I just thought I would add that little bit of information. I don't know if it's actually relevant or not. I came here to really talk about the property on McNulty. It's our home place. I've done a lot of homework on it, extensive homework, and opened up a website, and I only have a half a dozen of these on the actually website. I'd be glad to hand them out if anybody would like to have one, either now or, either later. Oh, it's only half a dozen of them. If anybody else would like one, I've got it. Anyhow, I really came here to talk about actually our home place on McNulty. I've done an extensive amount of work to actually come up with all of the facts, and this will probably blow some of you completely away. The center part of the house was a slave house. It was actually constructed probably at the most in the 1840s. It had a couple of front doors and a couple of back doors. After doing lots of work, I found out that a lot of the slave houses, but absolutely not all of them, but a lot of the slave houses, they were constructed that way to actually house a couple of families, a family on the one side and a family on the other side. I also pulled some of the hardware out, which I have, and if you can take a look at them, I don't know if you want to hand these out.
Mr. Wilson? Mr. Wilson, if if we could read what you're talking about in this document, and if that's everything you have to speak about the store, I really need to move on. But
You
if we
give me
could-
a couple of more minutes?
Yes, sir.
I also really have a book. It's a publication about the historic, different kinds of nails in the older, and actually older buildings. And to completely summarize everything, if you can look at them, if you can look at those older nails, they've got splits in the heads of them. That particular kind of nail, and only in that, and only in this sort of time frame, they were manufactured between 1828 and 1847. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you.
I think that explains it all.
Yes, sir.
The age of the house, and I thank you very much. I got to add actually one more thing. There's an access hole in the house, so I can actually take a look and see how that it was constructed. And I'm thinking, well, I think this thing ought to fall in. The construction on your upper roof, it's normally in our time 24 inches apart. These were between 3 and even 4 feet apart, which is evident in a plan that I have of a slave house that was built on the Blythewood plantation in Louisiana. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
I would like my nails back.
Miss Margaret DeBard.
My name is Margaret DeBard. I was brought home from the old Columbia Hospital in 1942 to a house that is still standing. I'm very sad to say, still a short time. That the house is just above the car wash. I was brought home that was my grandmother's boarding house. My mother and father brought me there. They lived there. Of course, my mother had grown up in that house. Now, I'm not talking about that house. I'm talking about the store. That's what we called it. It was the store. Of course, I can remember when Mother would sometimes start a meal, and she would send one. I'm the oldest and the last remaining of 3 sisters. We all grew up in that little house until I was 15, until that house on the hill, until I was 15. Woody and Ann, who you have a letter from, and I were in the class of 1960 at Blythewood High School. We graduated together. We started in the 1st grade and we went all the way through the 12th grade at Blythewood High School. So even though I do not live within the town, I live in Blythewood. I live at 1853 Cedar Creek Road on my husband's family land, which has been in the family since before the American Revolution. And that doesn't really have anything, but I want to talk about Wilson's store, which was the hub of the community. from as long as I can remember. Mother would sometimes start a meal and send us up to the grocery store. Sometimes we went up barefooted. I used to ride, my sisters and I, and you and Ann, we used to ride our bicycles on Blythewood Road, almost free of traffic. So we've been here a long time. We love this town. This town has history. And I'm glad, so very glad to see that I know so many of you on the board. I was afraid I was going to speak to a lot of people who really didn't know much about Blythewood. But I know Miss York, I know Paul, and of course Jim, and I've known each other since before we've known each other as long as we have memory. And I'm so glad that Mrs. Norris on the board. I would like to tell you that I happen to be the first chairman of what at that time was called the Blythewood Architectural Review Board. It was ARB, but ADR, I can't spell. Anyhow, but I have a good memory. I have a very good memory. Blythewood was once just the little town was a very vibrant community. And although I do not see many black faces here today, Blythewood was a community that was segregated when we were growing up. I started school in 1942, as I said, graduated from high school, went to Columbia College until I ran away and got married at 19. But I did finish Columbia College in 1973. But anyhow, Blythe, and I was the first chairman of the first, as we called it, Architectural Review Board. I was also on the founding board of the Historical Society. And I see several of our members here, and Ms. Nord has been so gracious to our entire community. I would like to thank her, and I would like to thank all of you for what you do. I know what's involved, and it's very, very important. I want to say that it would be a shame to destroy a building that was a very important part for almost 200 years of Blythewood. It was where people went to buy their groceries, their animal feed, their garden seed. It was where farmers bought their clothing. I remember overalls, and I don't know that they sold shoes, but they sold just about everything else. It was what I would call an emporium, as well as a grocery store. If it's like they used to say, if they didn't have it, you didn't need it, back when I was growing up. It sold lots of things, but more than that, it was where people, black and white, met. We were segregated. I like to say Blythewood was segregated when I was growing up, but the races weren't really that separated. But I'm not going, excuse me, I'm a historian at heart, but I'm going to shut up and say, please, we would like to see the original building remain. It is, when you tear down the extraneous stuff, it is a lovely old building. I don't think that it would, now I'm speaking for myself, that it would hurt to maybe add something to it, but I would like to see the heart of that building remain, because it is the heart of the Blythewood that so many of us here remember. It was where we went to buy our groceries and where we went to hear the news and to see each other. And it is a well-loved site. And like you say, when you come into what is really Blythewood, and I say I'm responsible for a lot of out there on the interstate, a lot of it. My father bought that property, and we had interstate property, and we've been very much criticized about what's out there. But remember, it is interstate. But this is not interstate. This is a little town. It was a little town. And we need to preserve this little town. I appreciate your time. Oh, also, one more thing. I have this to say. You know, growth and change are inevitable. But neither one are exactly progress in and of themselves. Sometimes progress You know, maybe some of you might have grandchildren to come back here one day, and they'll be delighted to hear the history of old Blythewood. Believe it or not, they will. I've got a lot of grandchildren. They're always delighted to hear about Blythewood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Margaret. Kirk, that's all that's on the list. You want to call Mr. Graham up?
Yeah.
Good evening, folks. My name is Matthew. I am the purchaser of the new building and the troublemaker, apparently, that's created the friction in the town. So, nice to see you all.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Kimberly Bonilla, and I'm also the co-owner of MKC, therefore co-owner of the currently still 300 Main Street, as you know it as the church. Thank you, everybody, for speaking up. I really appreciate that. I did not come from Blythewood. I actually am far, far away from that, unfortunately, but I do love it. So, again, thank you for your time. And of course, the board, thank you for your time and letting us go ahead and just show you guys what we have in mind with it, okay?
Okay, so would you like me to give me some, you want to give me some guidance on what you're looking for? Would you just let me make some comments? What would you prefer?
What I prefer is to tell us what your plans are.
Okay, so I'll give you a brief history, which is fairly brief because it's only a couple of months, and then we can kind of talk about where we are today and then what the options are for moving forward. So we bought this building back in December, around the beginning of December, and the intention was to make it a renovation store. So our goal was to completely renovate this building inside and out, make it brand new, not to knock it over. Little history on me. I'm from Blythewood, born and raised, went to Bethel Hanbury, not this new one, but the one before that. Went to Blythewood Middle and went to Ridgeview, and my senior year is when Blythewood High opened, so that gives you a reference for my history here. My family grew up here, I grew up here, family grew up all over. I still have family here. I still own our old homestead that I grew up in, so I'm very much, built into Blythewood, and Blythewood's built into me. That you can't get the Blythewood out of me. So, all that said, we bought this building to expand our current operations. We're in Lexington. We started in Columbia, moved to Lexington, and we've grown beyond where Lexington can accommodate us. So we need, we want to grow, and I figured what better place than to come back to where I started, to where my roots are. So we came across this building, and we worked on it for a while on the deal, and we finally got it worked out to where it was agreeable for myself and my co-owner and Miss Marie, who spoke earlier, and we were all in agreement that the building would stand. And I want to be really clear when I say this in front of the board and in front of the town, that is my preference. My preference is not to knock this building over. My preference is to keep this building standing strong as it is. I wrote an op-ed that Ms. Ball was nice enough to put in the paper and to let everybody know exactly what my standing is. But I'd like to then give you some background on why the request for demolition, to hopefully shed some light on why that tough decision was presented as an option. We bought this building with the intention of renovating it from the floor to the roof and then the exterior. That was our intention. So that's what we budgeted for. Well, as we got closer to closing, we did deeper and deeper inspections, and come to find out that crawl space from the dirt all the way to the subfloor and everything in between is in really, really bad disrepair. Really bad disrepair. The only way to maintain that building as it stands currently, by current building codes, which we don't get the chance to pick and choose what we want, we have to comply. So as soon as we go to renovate that building, once we touch it, we have to bring everything we touch into current code compliance. Well, as Ms. McLean mentioned when she was speaking, foundation is one of the most important parts, and I 100% agree with that. We cannot build a new building or a good building on a bad foundation. So what we have to do, if we're gonna keep this building, which again, for the record, is absolutely my preference, what we're gonna have to do is jack this building up, tear out the foundation, rebuild a foundation, and then lower the building back down. It's a major undertaking, and it's one that we did not have any intention or any plan or any knowledge of at the time when we were closing on it. We only found out effectively the very last day of our, right before we closed, or pretty much right when we closed, is when the message came through that that was what we're gonna have to do. So unfortunately, we were in this quagmire where we want to renovate it, we plan to renovate it, we bought the building, we had the budget, we had the plans, we had the designs. We were just met with a really tough decision. So we went back and we did some engineering studies real quick, and it come to find out it would be 6 figures cheaper to knock it down than it would be to repair that foundation. That's the bind that I'm in. The floor presents a life safety issue as it stands today. Life safety trumps history, it trumps preference, it trumps feelings, it trumps my plans, obviously. I have to make it safe. If I touch it and when somebody walks in there, they've got to be safe. That's my job. Separately, once we start renovating that foundation, we can't do bits and pieces of it. The code won't allow it. Everything that we touch has to be completely code compliant 100%. So we can't do one section here and a patch there. It all has to be done. So that's the position that we're in between life safety and building code, which we can't navigate around outside of, you know, the rules. We have to repair that foundation if we're gonna keep that building. And the issue here is not that my preference is to knock it over, quite the opposite. My preference is to keep it. I just don't know how to come up with a 6-figure difference now that we're in this position. And I've presented some options to the board that I thought might help at least give us an opportunity to generate some revenue, even long-term. I mean, I would even foot the bill on the front end if we were able to recoup it over a period of years, which I think is a reasonable solution. I think everybody here has probably been to the drive-thru and gotten a cup of coffee here in town, I would imagine, at some point. We all know how long it takes to get a cup of coffee here at the drive-thru. We think we can build a better mousetrap. So what we'd like to do is put in a little drive-thru behind that building. That was the solution that we came up with to prevent from having to knock that building down. That would give us the opportunity, at least the chance, to make that money back over time. That would allow us to be profitable, to at least break even on the expense that we weren't anticipating. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but what we've tried to do is come up with some options that provided to the town, that if we could come together on an option, it would work for us. But where we're at now is we're a little over 2 months in on holding this building to try to get this worked out. Well, while we're holding this building, we're incurring expense we didn't anticipate to incur. We thought we'd be tearing stuff out, painting walls, new wiring, new plumbing, everything. Well, we can't do that because we got to get this worked out first. I don't want to be the guy that comes in and bulldozes this building and have the mark on my back. Again, I came from here, that wasn't my intention, and I'm not trying to take away history from Blythewood. What I am trying to do is find an avenue that gets everybody what they want within a margin. And right now, I've presented the only solution that I know how to do, which is either wrap a car around that building to exit out onto Highway 21, or to, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the renovation right beside the new building, which is Ken Queen's property. He's working on a new build right there. The other solution that I suggested was to pass behind our building through Ken Queen's into his property on his parking lot and then exit out onto 21 right there. So either one of those options are good with us, or a combination of the two. But as of right now, that's the only feasible way we see from a monetary perspective to be able to cover the spread and absorb this expense that we weren't anticipating and meet current building codes. So that's where I'm at. I would put that back to you guys.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Graham.
Yes, ma'am.
When you purchased the building and you say you were unaware of the condition, what was your idea what were you planning to do with the building at that point?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, what was your name?
Sandy.
Sandy, thank you. That's a great question. So the intention there, I own a renovation company, and we're based in Lexington, so we're expanding. So we need another location for another storefront. So the idea was we would bring our business in there, we would renovate that building, and then we would occupy that building as a renovation company to provide services to the town.
So offices, then?
Well, yes, ma'am. Effectively, it would be a retail office, is what it would be. if that makes sense. But retail in the capacity of renovations, a renovations company inside the town of Blythewood.
And when you did purchase it, were you aware that it was a Class 2 historic building?
Yes, ma'am, I was. So the ideas behind what we've presented are within compliance, I believe. I don't think the town has any issue with our concept as far as updating, painting. We weren't going to take out any exterior walls. The idea was to keep it, I mean, largely the same. Effectively, all interior renovations were all we had planned. We had no idea about the extent. We knew there was like some things that needed to happen underneath. Obviously, it's not a brand new building, but we had no idea the extent of it until right before we actually closed on the property.
Thank you.
Matthew, you mentioned a foundation and you mentioned the floors. Is the foundation failing?
Yes, sir.
So when you say you have to redo foundations and floor, you're talking about structural footings and the like?
Yes, sir, all of it.
Does that fracture or structural deficiency, does it show up on the outside of that building? Like a cracked wall or?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know that but probably. I mean, if we were to go look at that, that wasn't our view, because again, when we looked at it through the lens of, can we clean this building up? So we didn't see anything. There was nothing evident on the outside, but once you walk through, so basically there was a church in there. It was occupied at the time. There was a lot of stuff. So now that it's empty, when you walk through it, you really get a feel for just how bad of a condition the floor and the crawl space, the subfloor, the floor covering is in. And so when our experts got up underneath and looked, they said, okay, we see the issues. We've got failing piers, we've got bad band sills, we've got floor joists that are rotten, we've got overspan. The gentleman earlier was talking about the span distances between, that it should be 24 on center or 16 on center. He's absolutely right. And these older buildings didn't comply with those building codes. And so the issue is, as soon as we pull a permit, we have to bring everything into compliant 100%. We can't just patch and do pieces and bits. When we touch a foundation, by code, we have to do all of it as soon as we get into it.
Is there a structural report of some sort available?
Yeah. We've got that. Our team did the inspection. I mean, that's what we do for a living.
I'm sorry, I should have asked you this before.
Sure.
I'm not making the leap from the historic building being used as offices and retail to what I think you said was now a drive-through coffee shop?
Right.
That seems like a big leap to me. I don't.
Totally understand. So I'll try to explain that again. Our original intention was not to put a coffee shop in there. That was not the idea. The idea was to have a renovation store. When we found the issue, when we realized there was a problem, we tried to come up with solutions that we could present to the town that would allow us to potentially recoup the expense we didn't anticipate we would have, while also being able to keep the building in its current condition without having to knock it over. So the coffee shop would allow us a chance to generate revenue over time that would allow us to recoup this expense that we didn't anticipate for the foundation. Does that make sense?
It does from a profit and loss aspect.
Yes, ma'am.
But I thought you said you had wanted to have a presence in this side of town with your company.
I see where the confusion is. So this would be, instead of just a renovation store, we would still have a renovation store there. There would just be a small section carved out of the back to allow for a drive-through. So it wouldn't be, the entire building wouldn't be the drive-through. If it's 4,000 square feet, which is roughly what it is, we'd probably dedicate 600 square feet to the drive-through. The rest of the store would still belong to our renovation store. So there would be two businesses there. Yes, ma'am. I should have clarified that better. I'm sorry.
That was not made clear. Thank you.
No problem. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Well, Yes, so in order to do anything in that building, now that we're gonna have to, so if we leave it like it is, we can kind of just get away with it. But that isn't our design, and to be quite honest with you, it's very difficult to sell new stuff in an old building. I'm just being honest with you, right? So it needs to be updated and fresh. But once we touch it, we have to bring everything compliant. We can't pick and choose the pieces by code, not because we say so, but because the building code says so, right? So we can't, if there's a bad wire, we can't just take care of one section of it. We have to take care of that entire wire. Well, the same thing applies when we pull a permit for renovation for a whole building. We've got to make that entire building compliant, or whatever pieces that we touch. And so the way that it works is we had it set up, and this is something that you guys can verify if you'd like to. So this building is governed by Richland County for the building aspect. So they have a 50% rule, and what that 50% rule says is that as soon as you do half of the building, you have to do all the building. So you can't renovate 75% of a building and bring it up to code and leave the other 25% non-compliant. They don't allow you to do that. So the issue here is that what we had previously, the way we had designed it, was because the cost of our renovation was less than half, the originally planned renovation was less than half, we didn't have to do everything. But as soon as the cost of our permit exceeds beyond half the value, we have to do the whole thing. That's not our rule, that's Richland County's rule. Does that make sense to everybody?
Something I don't understand is this board, and I don't think the town of Blythewood has nothing to do or no say-so whatsoever in curb cuts. So when it comes to curb cuts on 21, that's beyond anything that we have any say-so or control over. And the other thing you mentioned too is about going through adjacent property, which we also don't have any say-so about. That's between you and the owner of the property, which is next door.
Right.
And we have no say-so, no control, or no influence whatsoever that we can exhibit in that regard, and in terms you're solving what you call an issue with you. So
I agree. We also don't have any control over the fact that we found damage that we didn't know was there. So we understand your position. It's not that we're being difficult. It's just we were asked to provide solutions. We did the best that we could, and they may not be the best solutions. And we're sorry if our solutions weren't as effective or creative as, or as impactful as you had hoped. But we've really tried to provide. I think we're on our third or fourth iteration of ideas to try to offset this expense. And I understand that there are limitations for you guys. There's limitations for us. We get it. But the fact of the matter is, there's a very large expense which is at the heart of our conversation here. If there wasn't an issue with the foundation, we wouldn't be talking about this. We would just be talking about our renderings. But we can't do that because we have to address the elephant in the room that unfortunately we didn't know about till the very end.
how much time elapsed from the time that you closed on the property to the time that you put in the request for demolition?
We put the demolition request in almost right after we found out about the information, which was right after we closed on the building, or right about the time we closed on the building. So we found out the same day that we closed on the building. We found out that morning. I want to say it was that morning. So we closed on the building. We had found out maybe 2 hours prior.
But you're a renovation company, so why are you finding out these things right after you closed? Why not before?
Say that one more time.
Pardon?
Say that one more time. I didn't hear your question.
You're a renovation company, so why was it the damage apparent prior to you closing?
Well, so again, our intention, our focus was to keep the aesthetics, right? That was our primary focus. So we simply didn't put a lot of time into that because that wasn't where we were. That wasn't where we were aimed. I guess we were, to an effect, we were looking at it through a rosy-colored lens. To be quite honest, our goal was to keep it. Our goal was not to find a reason to knock it over. It was to find an avenue to keep it.
So you did no inspections at all of the foundation prior to closing?
No, didn't say that. I'm saying that our report that we read, that we came across upon a cursory review, showed that we could make it happen. But as we did a deeper dive, we had somebody else go back in. They had a couple of questions on a couple of spots. So we were trying to do our due diligence to make sure we were ahead of it. Well, it turns out that what would look like surface damage is not surface damage. And you can't really know that until you get to digging, right? You can have, there's termite damage, there's rot, it's just a compound, a myriad of issues is what we're dealing with.
So I'm just surprised with you being a renovation company that you would close on a building not understanding the damage.
I think there's a couple of things. We certainly don't claim to be perfect. And if that's the expectation, then we certainly don't meet it, and we apologize if that means that we're negligent in that regard. Perfection is not something we can provide. What we can provide is an earnest effort, and that's what we've done. And I think what I would like, and I've tried to maintain this perspective all the way through, but what I would say is that this building is over 100 years old, and there are going to be surprises. And this surprise was not one that we had hoped for. It's one we tried to avoid, and whether we're a renovation company or not has no impact on the fact that we're not clairvoyant. We can't see everything. And until we sent our second round of experts in there to go digging on what we thought was surface problems, we didn't know.
I'm sorry, I'm truly not trying to be argumentative, but when you buy a house, you have an inspection and you find out these things before you purchase.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're a construction company?
That's right.
Renovations? So I'm having a difficult time understanding when you knew it was a Class 2 historic building, so you obviously would appreciate that there would be some issues simply because of the age. So how deep did your pre-purchase review of this building, how deep did it go that you didn't, as a construction company, find this out before you purchased?
Great question, 100%. And as I mentioned to Mr. McLean, I think we had a bit of a rosy-colored glasses on because we really wanted to make this deal happen. And I think we probably were a little anxious, to be honest with you. In retrospect, we weren't anticipating this expense. We weren't anticipating to hold this building for months with no progress. That wasn't something we planned on. So again, we missed it. But I think what can be said about us as a company is, and I think as us, me being from Blythewood, I know this is how I was brought up. If you find an issue, you don't cry about it. You don't ask somebody else to fix it. You stand on your own 2 feet and you make it right. And that's what I'm about. That's what our company's about. We find issues, and whether they're pleasant or whether sometimes they're good surprises. Rarely in renovations are they good surprises, but sometimes. But typically they're bad surprises, and you've got to roll with the punches. It's not ideal, but it's where we are. And again, we don't shirk our responsibilities. We don't cry about it. We just stand there, we take it, and we move on.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, have you spoken with any experts in historical restoration? There are those around.
Yes, ma'am. We have, and we have good relationships with many of them. Many of the. Yes, ma'am, and.
But are you aware that there are grants available for this restoration? And of course, they're usually grants that you have to match.
Right.
Kind of thing, but there are those available. Richland County has a Richland County Conservation Commission. Historic restoration is one of their projects. Of course, you have to apply.
Right. And yes, ma'am, we are familiar, and we had.
Anyhow, there are those kind of, that they can help you, I'm sure you know, but I'm glad that you know, and I wish you would get some help.
Well, that's. I do need help.
As you live here, so you know how important that building has been.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Could our architectural advisor maybe comment on the building? And Ralph, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I know that you occupied that building for a number of years and probably have a pretty good idea of what the condition it was in as well. Now, again, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot,
I pastored a church at the time, although I was an architect and a contractor. I pastored a church in that building for 10 years. It was called Joy Church.
When was that?
That was from 1999 to 2009. We, at that time, which is quite some time back, we had no evidence of anything catastrophic with regard to structure. Matter of fact, there's only 2 columns in that building right now. We actually removed 2 columns and put a substantial beam between the 2 columns left. We needed the space for church seating. So We did not discover or have any sense of any lateral problems as far as floor goes, any real spongy floors, anything such as that as the applicant is talking about. That was quite some time ago. I wanted to mention a couple of things since you've asked me about our time in that building. It was extremely beneficial. We loved doing church in that building. Mr. Barry was a friend of mine, and the building was for lease, and he had just, when we were talking about renting it from Mr. Barry, he had a Red Dot store wanting to take that building, a liquor store. And it motivated my church congregation to take that store and rent it from Mr. Barry prior to him signing a lease with another client that was pursuing him at the time. But as it comes to this particular situation, I do have a couple of comments.
Sure.
The town, and Kurt can confirm this, the town actually has...
If you could hold your microphone up just a little bit closer.
Yes. So Mr. Kurt could confirm this. The town actually permits with a consulting building permit review folks, who is CCR?
RCI of South Carolina.
RCI.
Yeah, they've been with us for about 13 years. It's
RCI.
a third-party company that does all of our plan reviews, inspections, and that.
Yes, so the town itself is not under a county oversight. It's actually, the town does this. Also, one of the questions that I wanted to ask, if I'm okay, is, Mr. Kurt, does the town use existing building code as well as new building code? Do you know that for a fact? There is a code that's called the existing building code, and it basically deals with specifics regarding older renovations and things such as that. And not every community does adopt. I wonder, does the town of Blythewood, had they adopted the existing building code, that does make some difference in how situations are reviewed.
That's a great question. I'd have to do some research and get back with you on that. I know that we're currently, have adopted the most recent 2021 ICC. I know that that's not exactly what you're asking, but to be fair as well, this is the first situation in my time here that a historic building has come up for any sort of request for renovation, demolition, anything of that like. So it's a good question. I can't give you an answer right now, but I'd have to do some research and get back to the board.
That could make a difference to the applicant for sure if we actually have, as adopted, the existing building code. It does make the pathway at many times a little bit easier for a renovation project. I realize that the 50% number does fall into the existing building code as well, but as you pursue that code versus the standard building code, there is some latitude. The other thing that I would recommend, if the board would consider this, and I'm suggesting this perhaps to Mr. Kurt, is that we actually invite the inspecting company, third-party company, to come to the site and to walk the site with the representative, the building owner, and representatives from the town, and look at specific areas, and rather than assume what they are probably going to say, perhaps we could invite them and have them be updated as to the concerns and see whether they may, again, take a bit different approach than what the applicant feels that they're going to be hammered with. I think what he's doing is obviously expecting the worst, therefore that's what he's pricing, and often, not always, but often you can get the building official representative on a site, and there can become some negotiations, not things that we want to leave anything unsafe, but it is possible that having that person on site, if they would agree to come, and the town may have to, or the applicant may have to pay for that, but they would come to the site and perhaps with representatives from the applicant and the town, and I don't mind being there as well, we might find a path forward that's less financially burdensome for the owner. That was a suggestion I was going to make.
I think that's a good suggestion, Matthew. Was that something that you would entertain?
Yeah, I'm open to any avenue that works, but I would make it clear that if we did anything other than what is the current building code, as we have to put our hands and our license on it, we'd want liability shifted to a third party. We wouldn't absorb it. So if you're suggesting, or if the recommendation is to make a deviation from current building code, we won't put our license on it. That from a liability perspective.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily suggesting that. I'm saying that we look at interpretation. Your
Sure.
interpretation, my interpretation, his interpretation.
100%.
Yes, sir. So I think it would be worth perhaps getting the parties together at the site and determine what their review of the code versus
Right.
your review. Okay, maybe we have a different path we could take.
Got it. No,
And we wouldn't charge you for that. We would eat that cost or pay the cost to the third party.
Right,
So-
and I'm definitely open. I'm definitely open to look at it. I would mention though we are 2 months in, and we're stagnant. So
Yeah,
it would have
we
to
could
happen.
probably get something set up next week, I think.
Sure, that would be quick time. As long as we could make it happen before any deadlines, I think that would.
Do you have photographs of the undercarriage?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
May I ask to see them?
Sure,
on
yeah, we're
behalf-
happy to provide it.
Okay, that would be good. I think it would be helpful just for us to see what you're dealing with.
And just since I'm from a technical perspective, I mean you've got some background, so I'll give you this as well. The floor system, the floor covering that's there now, that building wasn't built with subfloor, obviously, like today, right?
Certainly.
So, sorry, say again?
It was built with boards, not plywood.
Right. So what happens is that flooring, and as another example, and we only know this because we do this again every day. When we take that floor covering off, those are structural nails. The gentleman mentioned earlier about the nails. Those nails are basically they're cut nails. Effectively, is what they nail those boards in with. And when they pull that out, that nail pulls through the structure of the existing floor joist because that's what it's nailed to. So you have a compromising structure there as well. So it's not just underneath, it's not just on, it's a combination of factors. And I'm happy to look at it.
Yeah,
Any
understand.
avenue we can find that would be alternative, certainly open to it. But I would say out loud, again, we do it every day, and I would let you know that if there was an avenue that was less impactful, less expensive, I would be open to it. But the fact remains, there is an expense there that we didn't intend, less or more. It's an expense that we didn't intend, that basically, we were right at the tipping point basically because of the cost of it, and we were right at that 50% line. Anything beyond that is pretty well gonna push us over it from a budgetary perspective, and that's my concern.
I understand.
Yeah, I know, again, we haven't had any issues with any historic properties in the time I've been here, but I do know Brian, Brent, and his team do have experience in other municipalities that they work in. Just they've shared things with me. So again, we would pay for that, and I would hope that I could get something scheduled as early as next week.
Sure. I know today's the 19th. Yeah, I mean, so if it was next week, that would be within our timeline. I think we could look at that.
Yeah, I obviously haven't talked to them, but I feel pretty confident that we could get them on site for
Cool.
30 minutes to an hour
Yeah. It wouldn't
and
take
again, you
doesn't
can-
take that long.
You can have everybody there,
Yeah.
and, you know, Ralph, if you would like to be present, Paul, if you as the chair would like to be present, you know, as long as we're all agreeable to that, you know, I think it'd be a good effort just to see and hear Brian and Brent's interpretation of what they see and if there's a path forward.
Sure, certainly open to that.
If that gets set up, can you bring a copy of the report? that
We'll
was
have
presented?
the folks there that crawled underneath.
Okay.
I think he was asking for the report.
Right. So we'll have the folks there that created the report. I mean, we can have the report as well, but better yet is we'll have the individuals who crawled underneath, who created the information.
Okay.
So we can have you all that. But I do want to mention this, and so certainly open to looking, certainly open to investigating and checking and balancing. We can do all those things. But I want to stress the timeline. We're months into this at our expense, and it's just an expense that we, again, didn't anticipate. So while I am open, and I think we've shown we have a clear line of communication with the town since the day we closed. We've tried to be very active about that. we are very much nearing the end of our timeline where we can continue to foot the bill at our expense.
I had a question.
Sure.
The company that did the inspection is your company?
That's correct.
So you didn't do a third party?
So the company that owns the land, the building, is
Right.
Team MKC. Palmetto Renovations is a separate entity. My employees are the ones in that business, separate business. So it is a third party from the landowner.
Okay. But just back to the whole, just curious, why would you wait until right before closing to do an inspection?
We didn't.
So that you knew the inspection. How long before the closing did you do the inspection?
Probably a week and a half prior, 2 weeks prior. We went out a couple different times. It was an active, it was,
So was there any reason it being a church, you wouldn't be able to inspect a foundation? You couldn't get under the church while it was
so
a church?
we don't do our inspections in pieces. We do it wholesale. So when we show up, we inspect the whole, like we don't inspect the floor one day and the electrical another day and the plumb, like we do a wholesale inspection when we do it.
I'm just, that seems not common, I would think, to do
Which part?
inspection, a week before your closing.
That wasn't the only inspection we did. We did multiple inspections throughout.
But I thought you just said you don't piecemeal your inspections.
Right, we did multiple full package inspections as we
So
we
they
did a
didn't find
baseline,
that?
I'm sorry?
So they didn't find anything on the first inspection?
They did. I mentioned that they had cursory, they saw what they thought was cursory damage. We went back and we said, okay, we think this is this, we think it's this, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I'll mention it again. I believe we were looking at that inspection report from through rose-colored glasses. I think we
Right.
were a little bit, we were kind of glass half full, and I think we should have been, in retrospect, we should have been a little bit more objective than we were, and I think that's something.
Just curious, how long did it go from the sale of the building? Just like a rough timeline, 6 months from the time you started looking at the building?
When we started looking, no, I think it was, I don't remember. I don't know if it was a 60-day or a 30-day. I don't remember.
So 2 to 3 months?
At least 2 months, between 1 and 2 months. I don't remember exactly when we engaged and we said, okay, we're ready to move forward. Because we talked about it for a while. We had been looking at the building objectively from the outside for, I don't know, a year maybe. There were some back and forth conversations. We've actually spoken with DOT. We've done a good bit of background work on this building before we typically don't jump in.
That's what I was kind of thinking. If you were going to spend as much money on this building, obviously you talked to the town about it being a historical building.
Mhm.
It just seems very uncommon to do the foundation inspection the week before the closing.
We did a follow-up inspection the week before the closing. We did the preliminary during our due diligence, which was prior to our EM going hard.
Gotcha.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, another question. You had mentioned that to try to recoup some of the cost of this, a coffee shop, a drive-through coffee shop?
Yes, ma'am.
How did you get to a coffee shop? Is there any statistics on that a coffee shop's going to make you any money in that particular position?
Yes, ma'am. So we have good relationships with many different types of business owners. We've done business in the past with coffee shops specifically standalone coffee shops. So we know a good bit about the background of that. So we're familiar with the P&L. Yes, ma'am. We're familiar with that business model.
I think we've heard we need to go in executive session. That is what we're going to
Yes.
do, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It sounds to me, you're a renovation company, right? So your real issue is because you want it to be a renovation retail store.
Yes, sir.
And you want it to be renovated, right?
Yes, sir.
However, if you were intending to open a mercantile store, you could actually move in there and open a mercantile store. It's really because you got customers that will come in, and you want this place to be totally renovated. But it sounds to me like the building could in fact be used without being renovated.
I see. So
And if you got your report 2 hours before you close on the property, why would you close on the property?
because I gave my word, that means something to me. That's important to me. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And if I get to the last minute, and it doesn't line up like I thought, I don't shirk. I don't yank the rug. I own it up.
But using monetary
Well, I want to be clear. I'm not using anything. I'm communicating the facts. I'm letting you know that the fact is that the foundation is bad. We didn't know it. Now we do, and we know what it's going to cost to get it fixed. So in order to fix it, we got to spend this money, and it's not money that we allocated for. Now, here's the other side of it. If the town wants to put together a GoFundMe and they want to put together a package to cover the cost of the unanticipated expense, I'm all about it. Let's do it, right? If it's that important, I'll get behind it. But at the end of the day, we sold our investor package and said, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to expand our business. And that's why our bank approved it, and that's why we were able to buy this historic building in Blythewood. And if we go in and we change it on the backside, they're going to say, wait a minute, you told us you're going to expand a business, now you're going to go in there and do something totally different. We've spoken with them about modifying the package to say, okay, if we keep our renovation store and we add on the back a coffee shop, would that be something that they would accept? They said they could get that through. But if we eliminate the owner-occupied portion, which would be our business going in, that's not going to fly.
I think the board needs to understand that this building's been in operation, continuous operation for quite a long time, right? Even it was churches or whatever the last
Right.
Really, because you want to totally renovate it, you got the issue. But you could, in fact, open a retail store in that building the way it is today.
I'll be honest with you, and this is not in any way meant appointed or derogatory, but the condition, I would love to walk through that building with someone who would want their kid to walk through that building. The electrical condition, the electrical wiring, the panels are in such disrepair that it's shocking to me, no pun intended, that it was operational. And I don't mean that as a derogatory mark, I just mean it's in that bad a shape. I wouldn't let my kid work, be there with it open, knowing the condition of it. Yes, ma'am, 100%. That was my intention. Again, we was to renovate that. 100%, and that was part of our package to replace that. What we didn't anticipate for was the additional expense of the subfloor and the foundation.
I did have one more question. So with the coffee shop you're asking about, so obviously that's not even in front of us today, right? There's no appropriate.
Right.
So you keep saying that, but by doing that, does that mean if we were to do that, you wouldn't want to tear the building down? What is I guess what are you asking for
that's
when
what
you say that?
That's what she and I were speaking about earlier. So effectively, what we're trying to do with the coffee shop is find an avenue to generate revenue to offset the additional expense we didn't anticipate.
Right,
on
but
the front
that's not before us today. I know you keep saying it, but you haven't asked us that I'm aware of for that.
So we've provided diagrams, we've provided all the communications to the town, and that was quite a while back. You may not have made it to you, but it's been provided. I've got it here actually in a packet if you'd like to see it. These are date stamped from when we provided it to the town last month.
Last month?
Yes. Would you like to see it? When it was requested after our in-person meeting. Would you like to see it?
Mr. Wilson, are you aware of that?
Yeah, that was in the meeting that we had with myself, Mr. Driggers, and Matthew and Kim. And again, just to reiterate, I think we support all of those options, but as was stated, we have no control over those options.
Sure, 100%. I get it.
So, the encroachment permit going behind the building, absolutely we would support.
Right.
But the other two options to deal with the property owner right next to you, and
Right.
obviously it's a private property owner, but if something could be worked out with that property owner, again, we would support that as well.
Right.
So he provided us these three options. We would support that, but we have no control over that.
Any other questions?
I've been in and out of construction close to actually 50 years. I think you can replace the floor in the building independent of your walls.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Isn't that right?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Mr. Chair, I think we'd like to move at this time, we'll be going to executive session.
Can I get a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
B? All those in favor say aye. We had an executive session to receive legal advice. There were no votes taken.
I am going to make a motion and move that we deny the certificate of appropriateness for demolition of 300 Main Street and enter findings prepared by the attorney.
Sandy, would you mind, just repeating it in the microphone?
I'm sorry. I'm making a move that we deny the certificate of appropriateness for demolition of 300 Main Street and enter the findings as prepared by our attorney. All those in favour? Or do I have a second? The motion that we move to deny the certificate of appropriateness for demolition of 300 Main Street and enter findings prepared by our attorney.
Is there a second? Can you say second, please? Oh, okay.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against? That's all for the night.
Motion to adjourn.
No.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Need a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make the motion that we adjourn our session for tonight.
Second? Can you second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.